Before I introduce, before I introduce our speaker, I just want to remind everybody we're recording, and the recording will be on the website for some weeks. We're also going to try to have a question and answer at the end, but from what I've heard from Kathleen, she's open to a discussion about certain issues if you want to pursue them. And also, be sure you're muted when you're not talking, so we don't interrupt the speaker. So without further ado, I introduce Kathleen Crombie. She helps people organize all over the country. And by the number of people here, I think a lot of us feel that we could use your help too. So, Kathleen.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm friends with Barbara. That's how I learned about your group. So I am just honored to be here today. And I don't have slides because I want it to be more interactive and to kind of meet your needs and what you guys are looking to learn about. But I'll just tell you a little bit more about me. I grew up in Minnesota, and my grandmother, when she was, I think, 48 years old, her husband suddenly died of a heart attack and left her with a 1,000-acre farm and 7 children. And you could imagine how challenging that would be. And part of the way that helped her cope was to start acquiring things. And so I grew up with a grandmother who had hoarding disorder, but there was not a name for it. I just thought everybody had a grandmother who had little, I call them goat paths, on the second and the third floors of her house. When she saved everything, things of value and things like empty yogurt containers, every Life magazine since she first started getting them. And so she would also go to auctions and take things on the roadside she thought that could be useful in some manner. And so I grew up learning how difficult it was for the family and how they were concerned about her safety as well as her little issue. And that's how I started becoming interested in this. Fast forward of working many years in a psychiatric hospital in New York, White Plains, New York, and then on the West Coast in Berkeley, California. I was fascinated how clients and patients that were in the hospital were never asked what their living conditions were like. We treated their acute issues, but we never really asked. And so I would ask, can you prepare food? Can you find things? Are you paying your bills as well? Because these are all things that can impact a person's stability and their quality of life. And so it kind of asking questions, be careful what you ask for. You get a lot of more questions, and wanted to know, well, what is it about some of these folks that just get overwhelmed and can't seem to be able to maintain their living situations, or that they're ostracized from family and friends? So I started digging a little bit more, and it was around the same time that the American Psychiatric Association was coming up with the first time ever diagnostic criteria for hoarding disorder. Up until this point, they thought that hoarding behaviors were an offshoot of people with OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. And as they found out through more research and interviewing people with hoarding challenges, that only about a third of people with OCD challenges also struggle with hoarding issues. So that's why they made it its own diagnostic criteria. And again, it doesn't matter where you are. We all struggle with sentimental stuff. We all struggle with what to do with things because it's so much easier to acquire things. And even when we became a computer time and everyone said we'll have a paperless office, I don't know about you, but I can't get rid of paper. And it's also my preferred way of learning, even though there are other options. I like touching books. I like reading newsletters. And I am extremely sentimental. And I inherited all my grandmother's love letters from the time after her husband died, and she started having suitors. And nobody wanted them in the family, but guess who got them? So what do you do with these kind of things? So I became interested in this and learned a lot. And the important thing that I can just kind of share with you, that people with hoarding, that's more clinical. It is a psychiatric diagnostic thing. But people who go back and ask, when did this start happening? It started happening between ages 7 and 13. And we tend to think that this is something just in older folks. It is not. They start having difficulties in the early ages. And usually it's mothers that help their children keep it in check. And so there's an effort now to try to learn more and try to help younger kids and teenagers and first time going to college kids, so that we don't get it to that point of having kind of a full-blown hoarding disorder. But the way I come up with, think about it, is that it's on a continuum. That clutter can be according to, if you I sprained my ankle this weekend, so I can't get around very well. And so clutter has established in my little spot in the living room where the remotes are, where I ask my husband to bring over, drinks and all that stuff. And so it can happen really quickly because of a physical issue. But we're all on some continuation of it. And the thing that I want to address today are a couple things. What to do when you have acquired things through inheritance. That's a big issue for a lot of folks. And if you become the keeper of the historian of your family, art, books, anything like that. The other issue that comes up a lot is, what do I do so that I can prepare for when I pass? How can I get it ready for the people after me? And because they don't actually want some of my stuff, even though I love it and it's really important to me. So that's another piece of it that we'll get at. And then the last thing is what to do with daily clutter, and where are the clutter hotspots, I call them. And so I want to just have you guys open up for a moment, and we're going to go backwards. Where are some of the clutter hotspots in your life now? And anyone can unmute and just share, if they feel comfortable, what those clutter hotspots are. Jane, whoops, you have to unmute, Jane.
Mine is at my kitchen table, because I keep my calendar there. And now I'm keeping a lot of my mail there. First, it started as my calendar, now it's my mail. And it's also now got some of the drawings and cards and things that my grandson sent me. So it's beginning to look like a real jumble.
Thank you. Anyone else have a hot spot? Eleanor.
Excuse me, in the scope of what we're doing today, but my real hotspot is on my hard drive, my C drive.
So electronic clutter. I'm so glad you shared that. Anyone else? Susan?
I have actually two and a maybe. The family room table is where I put things I'm working on. And my problem is, and it's at the other end of the table I'm sitting at right now. And my problem is I put things down when I'm going to do something else and they don't get put anywhere else. And so once a week or so, I have to sort the table. And then things get back to clear, and then it starts over again. Same thing with my desk. I have an office upstairs and the desktop is in need of the decluttering. I spread everything out on my bed and have to put it in categories and so on. And occasionally I even do that on my dining room table. But everything else, including my drawers, I keep my drawers very, very neat. It's just those spots.
Thank you. Barbara, you had your hand up.
I'm kind of like Susan. Everything is very neat in my place, but my desk can be a hot spot. I'll put mail there, and sometimes I keep things from charitable organizations where I've given money before, and I say, oh, I'll give this month, but then the month passes by, and before you know it, it's November, December. And I try to clean it up every week, but for some reason things accumulate. I even have some nail polish on my desk right now.
Greta.
Yes, I feel like this is a support group. Yeah, what you just said, Barbara, about the mail. Mail comes in, it gets so spread out there, dated, opened, looked at, and yes, charitable requests. Oh, I really should give to this one or that one. They pile up, and exactly as you said, before you know it, it's November or whatever, and you've got the old ones there. But that may be a minor part. I mean, if you look at my desk here, I seem to be, I don't know if happier is the right word, but I seem to work with all this stuff around me and my desk. The basement is another story, and the family heirlooms, I think you're going to get to that. But this is what, with the day-to-day, is what you're talking about right now. And I like to think of myself as an organized person, and in some things, yes, but in other things, no. And the clutter is becoming a big problem. But you know, my daughter just came into town, and we haven't seen her for many months. And her bed, which is behind me in my quote office, gets piled up with stuff. So I was hurriedly rummaging. It was an unexpected visit, and I was hurriedly trying to get everything off the bed. Some of it went into a box that's down here, and some of it. Yeah, I'm almost embarrassed to talk about this, but it helps to know that I'm not the only one. Then next is what to do about it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's why we do this, because this is, you are not alone. And Paula had her hand up real quick.
You know, I'm struggling because my kids have moved out finally, and we have a guest bedroom for the first time in years. And I just have all of their clutter as well as my own and my husband. His parents passed away within the last 5 years. And so all of the stuff that they had has now moved here because of COVID. It hasn't been dispersed throughout the family. So we're just brimming with stuff. And it's hard to know how to tackle it, how to get started.
Excellent. Excellent. Phyllis, did you want to add?
Yeah. Well, I've always subscribed to the idea that everything has to have a home. And so for the most part, the things that are, shall we say, on the desktop, things that are I'm dealing with more or less currently, they eventually find their way to the home. I think it's the less commonly used things that tend to accumulate. And I when I see them, I think, I don't want to deal with that. I don't have to deal with that. I'm talking about, oh, I have a guest room also, and in there I have my hardware, I have my luggage, you know, I have photographs, none of that is something that I need to pay much attention to. So it tends to get out of hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are all really good examples of how it can, different hotspots and the daily stuff, and also inherited stuff, adult children stuff. Because guess what? Free storage if you leave it at mom and dad's house. And storage is expensive. I don't know if you guys have had storage units, but they're masterful at saying, oh, it's $1 for the first month, and then 3 months are going to be this price, and then whomp, they increase the price, and then they do annual price increases, and it's like out of sight, out of mind. So you're like, oh, I'll just leave it there. I'll get to it this year or something. So I am not anti-storage if it's for a limited time, but it's really easy to blow it off if it's out of sight, out of mind. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what to do with family heirlooms and or kids stuff. So the kid stuff is a little bit easier, but not easy. What I encourage people who are kind of being the storage unit for your adult children, because they will say, I don't know where I'm going to land. I'm in a temporary apartment. And they have lots of reasons why they don't know, or I'll get to it, or, oh, just throw it away, mom. And maybe you're the one who doesn't want to get rid of it either. So there's different layers to it. But in general, I recommend that you let the adult child know that, hey, I've got some boxes here that are yours. And the next time you come to visit for a holiday or whatever, I'd like you to sit down with me and kind of go through that and, decide what you want to keep. Otherwise, I'd be happy to send you the boxes at your expense. And it's, again, that's your own choice, but it's important to kind of use your own sense of how much space you have and how much you are storing for them. And some people will actually, I know a friend of mine who does not have grandchildren, but she's already collected toys for the someday grandchildren. She has 8 bins of toys for the someday grandchildren. And she doesn't have room to unpack her own stuff. So we have to look at, how is this impacting our life? Because we have to live within the area of space that we have. So let the kids know, give them a deadline, and also be aware of how much of it is your issue. Does it keep you kind of grounded and connected to your kids by having those boxes? Are there other ways that you might want to explore or minimize the number of boxes of stuff? My mom always said that, as long as I have some of your stuff, you're always going to come back and visit me. I'm like, I'm going to visit you anyway, Mom. And so she's like, oh, good. Let's empty those boxes then. So have a conversation, set some time frame. And your adult children may also need some assistance. They may need some assistance with it because they're not even sure how to go through, the report cards, all the things they've made when they were in elementary school or all that stuff. So they may need some assistance on sorting through things, and you may or may not be the one to help them with that. I'll give you some resources for that. So family heirlooms. So how many of you are actively having family heirlooms in your home? Yeah. So it can be really challenging. And I find that in general, more women than men are the receptacles of family heirlooms. That some of the male siblings are like, I don't want to get rid of it. But we have this wanting to have information about loved ones, as well as attachments, as well as genealogical kind of history. We like being the keepers of those stories. And one of the things that can be helpful is to think about these are inanimate objects, right? Which of those inanimate objects are more meaningful to you, have more joy, have more connection, and will help you smile when you have that item in your home? So, for example, or can you take something that is a piece or a collection of something? So you don't have to save all of them. So I have all my grandmother's letters. I don't need all of them. Can I take a selection of them and keep those to give honor to my grandmother, but not keep all of them? So that means doing kind of a just pick a few of them. And how much space do I have? Because that is a real issue. How much space do you have? And deciding how much space am I going to honor this person? Some people will have a mini altar with the photo of the person with maybe one or two of their smaller items, but larger pieces of furniture, things like that can be a little bit more challenging. And one of the holdups that I find is that people will say, well, it's been handed down through the generation and it's my obligation to save it and go on to the next generation. And I will ask, if your deceased loved ones could speak to you, what do you think they would say to you about that? Usually they would say, I like to imagine, don't be so hard on yourself. It's an inanimate object. Just remember me, give honor to me, pass on stories about me. That piece of furniture is not me. So that can be one way to look at it. Has anyone else dealt with this for heirloom items? Yeah, Jane.
Well, I'm one of the ones that has a storage locker off-site. And I put a lot, and I had two. If I was really going to fess up, I had two, and I've gotten rid of one, and the other one is still sitting there with stuff. Now the heirlooms, I haven't kept so many of them because I send it to my brother, who's on the West Coast and will never be able to give it back to me. Thank heavens. So, but it's hard. It's very hard to separate. It was very hard for me to separate the person from the stuff. Because I would look at certain chairs and think of my mother. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the challenge, is to think about, are there other ways to honor that loved one? And that could be from something smaller, perhaps, or it actually could be a memory of some event that you shared with that person. Can you write that down and hold on to that, or frame that in some fashion, or find something that reminds you of that event, rather than if space is a challenge for you. But what's hard is that there's no easy way, and that I find it important for people to be able to have someone listen to you talk out loud about the options and have them tell you no suggestions. Just let you listen. I mean, have you talk, they listen, so that you will make up a decision what works best for you, but it can take some time and some processing, and there's no perfect way. to honor, obviously, because it's a huge, relationships are something that we're going to always want to honor because they're with us. It's part of who we are as well. So I think talking can be really helpful and come up with something that works for you. And Jane, the fact that you got rid of one of your storage units, that's fantastic. There is no shame in having a storage unit if that's what works for you at this point in your life, because it can be very challenging to make decisions about these things. My father passed away in January of this year. I had 4 boxes of his belongings, and I said, I'm going to whittle it down to 2 boxes. And I was able to do that. And I found out that one of the boxes was only 1/4 full anyway. So that helped a lot, but I was not able to since January to look at those things. So it just takes some time. And Eleanor, you had your finger up? Oops, you're on mute.
Sorry. I was thinking about what Jane said about her stuff. And I don't have a lot of stuff. I have some choice items that I have, maybe a dozen or even 2 dozen, I don't know, in separate places throughout my house and closets. But I caught myself saying one time, I'm just going to hang on to these things because my son will inherit them when I'm gone. And he doesn't know these people anyway, so he'll trash them. But I don't have to trash them. I'll let him do that. But, you know, your advice about we can trash this stuff, but please leave a story about them reminds me that I should, even if I don't trash them, knowing he will, I'll add a story about that to the legacy letter that I'm writing for him.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. Carol.
It helps me to take pictures of the things before I give them away. And it helps me if I know that they're going to somebody who might want them, even if I'm giving them away, you know, that they're not just going in the trash. When we went through my family's stuff, my sister is like, I can't give anything away that my mother owned. And I didn't feel that same way. I do wish she would have left some guidance of like, this is something I really liked, and this is even where it came from, because a lot of things came from grandparents and great grandparents, and I would have kind of liked the story, you know, to be with it. And so, yeah, so those were the things that were kind of meaningful for me. But then kind of like Eleanor, then now I have a hard drive of photos that I should probably organize. But
yeah. And so the good news is that where we live in the Chicago area, there are resources that will help distribute items to those in need. The Chicago Furniture Bank is one. They have their own trucks. They will come to your place, depending on volunteers and how busy they are. But there are also other. Salvation Army will sometimes do that. Items, gently used items, are hot right now. It has not always been that way. And so there are places that you can be assured that they will be donated and given to those in need. Yes, Phyllis. You have to unmute.
Even things like pianos and upholstered furniture, I've heard from other people that it's very difficult to unload those things.
So it can be, it depends. And again, all these agencies, you have to make a few phone calls yourself. It is constantly changing. They wax and wane on how many items they have and they can handle. And so there are times of the year when they have too much, and there are times when they don't have very much. So unfortunately, there's not one place you can call, but you have to make a few phone calls and say, the other way to do it is if you're on Nextdoor or other places like that. If you can say, I have a upholstered something or another, I'd like it to go to a family in need. then you can also get responses that way. So we do have more options, but it takes a little bit of time and effort. But for most people, there are ways to make sure those things don't go in the landfill, that they go someplace that can be used. Habitat for Humanity, I think there's one in Evanston. I don't know if I think they take building materials, not furniture and things like that, but they might be able to tell you who might want to take those kind of things. So, yeah, Joan.
I learned a lesson from my grandmother that I somewhat resented initially. I'm an only child. My father was an only child. And when people would visit with her and admired something she had, she would think about it. She didn't do it on the spur of the moment. The next time they came, she said, "Would you like this?" And she had a few things that I really treasured growing up, and that were gone by the time she died. And though I even considered asking for them back from somebody, which I didn't do. But it was an interesting lesson that I have now practiced myself. My mother's china that I had looked very much like a good friend's china, and she liked to do large events. And I asked her if she would like it. And so I have given things to friends, not at the point where I necessarily needed to get rid of them, but I knew that my daughter had no interest and that I probably wasn't going to be using them again. And there is a sense of satisfaction in that you know where something that has a history is going, and that it will be hopefully loved and used. And I have found that comforting, and I've been grateful to my grandmother, even though I wish I had a few of the things that she gave away.
Yeah, but you got a great lesson from her. What a
Yeah.
great gift that she gave you. Yes, Jane.
If anybody lives in a house, and the garbage trucks go up and down the alleys, and sometimes there's then before the garbage trucks, there's people who sort of scavenge.
Pickers.
Yes.
For metal.
Scavenge alleys.
For metal.
And no. Anything. I mean, there's people that are getting not just metal, furniture, whatever you put out there. So when we were moving out of our house, our garage was on the alley, and we just waited for someone to come by who was looking. And I ran out, I opened the garage door and pointed, and the wife was just thrilled because it was 2 couches. So I think there's probably ways that we can get things to people that want them and need them. If we just think about how that could happen.
Yeah, I will say a little word of caution for safety, because if you can offer these things on different platforms and things, but I would not invite people to come to your homes unless you know them, or have someone that can be at your home with you. Odds are that everybody's good, but there's always 1 or 2 little bad examples. And so I would just be careful about inviting strangers into your homes. That's my safety lesson for the day. But I want to go and talk a little bit also about electronic things, because emails, photos, things like that. How many of you have a lot of electronic stuff, or you keep buying storage on your, yeah. So it used to be that they said you could have unlimited storage. I have a Gmail account. When I signed up, they said unlimited, it's going to be fine. Well, guess what? They found out that too many people wanted that, and now they have to start charging you for how many emails you can save or archive and things like that. So it's become an issue and more challenging for people. So some people will buy a hard drive, external hard drive, and have that as an option, but the reality is it can become digital clutter. And it can also be hard to manage if you want to find a photo of something, or if you wanted to find a document, can you find it? So there's a parallel between the actual stuff like papers and things like that, and then digital stuff. And so it's the same thing. There are actually professional organizers who specialize in digital organizing. There's specialty for everything these days. But the point is that they can help you if you want it, but it's like putting up making a filing cabinet in your electronic stuff. So just like you would have files, large categories, and you want to be very picky about what you want to hold on to. My former mother-in-law, amazing photographer, Helen. She loves to take pictures. She cannot delete pictures. She just saves them all. And so what she has done recently is she has a private family Facebook group where she will put the best of the pictures every single day. She puts 4 to 8 photos on the family Facebook page, so that she is, by process of elimination, distributing all the photos to her loved ones. Some of us are concerned about that, right? As well as she says, well, whenever I pass, whatever's left over that I've not shared on the Facebook group, they're probably not good photos. So you guys can deal with it. And so it's a way for us to think about how are we going to share some of these, especially photos. I mean, I have printed photos and electronic photos, right? And how are we going to share those, make them accessible for people? And it starts with being very picky about the ones that you hold on to. And that is not easy. And it's kind of boring to go through all that. And it's hard to figure out, well, that one's a little blurry, but that has Uncle Joe in it. And this one's really clear, but I don't know who those people are, but I recognize that person's living room. So that's just interesting how we can save kind of everything, because it's an avoidance of making decisions. For a lot of people, it's about fear of making the wrong decision or not making the perfect decision. And I'm here to give you all permission to aim for good enough. It is easier to organize your belongings when you have less belongings. That means photos, documents, all of that. And I think, Susan, did you have your hand up real quick? Yeah.
I don't even know, I think it's about 30 photo albums. And that's not counting the last probably 20 years or 15 years worth that are in, some of them are in bags from trips. Those are just gonna throw out. And I have only one son, and he has learning disabilities and lives at Lamb's Farm. So there's no question they'll all go into the garbage when I die. But I'd like to figure out a way to organize them or digitize them so that I can look at them, because now when my son comes home, he and I will sometimes look at a book. And there has to be some guidance that you could give on how to decide what to do, you know, a rule of thumb of how much to save and how to best digitize it or get it in some way that we can look at them now and enjoy them.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, my kind of way is to think about people's attention span, as well as try to find a sample of different events. You don't need to have 30 photos of one event. Maybe have one photo from an event. And I'm a big believer in writing the story down or other little information that was meaningful that you want to pass on in your own handwriting, or type it and cut and paste it and put it behind the photo so that whoever sees it will be able to turn it over and kind of hear the story and know who the people are in the story. So you're just trying to spark the memory, not have a complete archive of the event. And that's where it's kind of like, you know, when you fly, you're up in 30,000 feet and you're looking down, and that's where I do my best thinking. It's like, well, think about the things that are important from high up and pick the things that are most important. You do not have to save every single, and I'm guilty of this, picture of your kids eating a piece of cake from age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? You want like some of the funnier pictures or some of the ones that have their quirky smile on it or something like that. We're not obligated, because if they're in your possession, they are yours to make a decision. No one is going to come to your home and say, I'd like to see every photo that your child had for each birthday. And if you don't show me that, you are going to get a lower grade on being a mother. But it doesn't work that way. But we hold these ideas into our head on what we have to, because perhaps that's what someone in our family did. But we really get to make the decisions now for what's going to work for you. And I love, Susan, that you said, so that I can enjoy those photos now, and that I can, when he comes to visit, show them. And that's what I ended up doing with my father, who had dementia, is that I would bring a few photos every time I would visit him and ask to hear about the stories. I didn't bring a whole stack of photos. I just brought a few at a time. And it was a way for us to connect. So I think that's kind of what I try to encourage people to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I can use that for the 4,000 pictures I took on a recent trip. I mean, literally over 4,000 pictures. I was in Australia for 5 weeks. And and it's on a camera. It's so easy to take 10 pictures because you can throw them out, but I never make time to throw them out.
Yeah, so you may want to try to think about looking at the top. You get to choose the top 20 pictures from each week. So it's about sorting. And it's the same thing with, and I'm going to come to clutter on our desk, on our family room or table. It is okay to have clutter, but you're the only one who can decide, are there moments when I don't want to look at the clutter? So I have a rule. For me, there can be no dirty dishes in my sink between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. That's my rule, because I don't like to wake up and see dirty dishes. So I also like to have my dining room table cleared every night between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. so that I can come down and it's a clear table. But between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., I use that flat surface to organize things and to sort and make decisions. But then I have to put that stuff away till the next time I'm going to work on it.
And what if you haven't finished that sorting? So then you're putting it in a temporary location, right?
And is that okay?
What sort of has to be if you don't have time to finish it?
Yeah. So different people have different abilities to tolerate clutter. Some people, what I always say is be careful, because when you put clutter, you leave stuff out. If it's a project that you're working on, clutter breeds clutter. If you see some things on the dining room table, it's super easy to add just one more thing. Well, I'll get to that later. It's not part of that project, but I'll get to it later. So it depends on what your tolerance for visual clutter is. If Phyllis, you can say, I'm doing this project, and I'm not clearing this off until I'm done, then if that's what you can handle, great. You can have people over and say, that's just the photo project I'm working on. For other people, they might not be able to tolerate that. And there's really good evidence that the act of putting it away and then taking it out and re-looking at it, you might make some new decisions. Because you have to rearrange it a little bit and go, why did I keep that? Or, you know, all kinds of different reactions can happen. So it's giving yourself a fresh look at something. So it just depends on what works for each person. The other option is put a sheet over it so you don't have to see it. And then, so there's no right or wrong. It depends on what works for you.
Preparation for taxes is another one.
Absolutely. But that's a time limited thing usually. But what I always encourage people is like, well, you don't want to walk past the dining room table and see all of that every day and go, oh, I got to deal with my taxes. Oh, I hate dealing with taxes. Oh, why do we have to pay so much in taxes? You know, so if you are not bothered by that visual stuff, and then leave it. But it can be really easy for that visual to become kind of disappear, or become what I call clutter blindness, that you just don't see it. It kind of just becomes not a thing anymore. So we have to also watch that. I want to talk also a little bit about end of life kind of things. I don't know if you guys have heard that there's a new program on TV. It's based out of, I don't know if it's from Sweden or not, or England, but it's based on the book, The Swedish Death Cleaning. Have you heard of that book? Yeah, anybody read it? So I've heard through my network that the TV show is okay, not great. Would not go try to find it and spend time on that. The book is better. And basically what it is looking at how to get your affairs in order. And that means your stuff as well. And having conversations with people about, well, do you want this or do you not want this? And you get to decide if you're going to let your loved ones make the decisions or if you want to make the decisions. Either way is fine. Yes, Greta.
What is the name of the book?
I think it's the Swedish art. No, I have mild dyslexia, so I'm always moving words the wrong way. The Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. That's it.
The Art of Swedish. Do you remember the author?
I don't.
Okay, but it should be look upable.
Yeah. The Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. And it's actually, I'm a therapist, so it's actually something that helps people also kind of just go through the process of making your own decisions about what you want when you've passed. None of us really know when that will happen. And it's a hard topic to talk about, and it brings up lots of feelings. However, it can be very empowering to also know that you've thought about what you want and you've communicated that or written down what you want. And that can be small things that you want or even more elaborate things that you want. And it is a gift to your loved ones if you can tell them what you want. And if you don't know what you want, that's okay too. You don't, it's okay. It's not more pressure of more things to do. Any other questions about that concept? Yes, Barbara.
I kind of hate that my loved ones are going to have the burden of cleaning out my place. I wish I could die and everything was already thrown out. So I'm trying to figure out, what should happen after I die, that have the kids take whatever they want. And then I want to get the name of a person who can come in and sell the stuff and just get rid of it.
Well,
so trying to line
There are
all that
names.
up.
Yes. Yeah. You can give them a list of 3 different estate folks that can come in and hold an estate sale, or come and take the items that the kids did not want and bring them to an offsite, either auction house or other kind of place, and that they would be auctioned off. The auctioneer gets a certain percentage, and then the rest would go to your estate, and in any way that you would want that divided up amongst your loved ones.
I'm pretty much a minimalist, but my cousin Carol and her husband are moving to independent living. And it's just making me think of it like we all have stuff, even if we don't have a lot of stuff, we
Yeah.
have stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Barbara, did you see that closet of that memory care suite?
Oh, it was small. Is
It was
that
tiny. It was
Yeah.
tiny. I couldn't believe it. We're talking about a memory care place in Wilmette that we visited last week. And I was shocked at the size of the closet.
I guess I won't care what I'm wearing if I have to move into one of those. I don't know. We weren't looking for ourselves. It's part of a North Shore Village thing. We had a
Right, we were just
board
getting
meeting there.
acquainted, but still.
No, absolutely. And it can be really helpful to, obviously some of us are going to want to plan ahead. Others are like, I don't know, it's not my problem. My kids are going to have to, or my family's going to have to deal with it. But it can be really helpful to think about, if I had to move to a memory care, what items would I want to bring? And you can actually make a list of those things now. Because if you progress into that point where you may need that, you're probably not going to be able to make that list at that point.
Right.
And other people are going to have to guess and try. So it's an interesting exercise to think about, what 5 items would I want on the walls or in my little nightstand in my memory care place. It, again, it depends on what you're comfortable and you want to do.
And I have one more thing. It seems people have a hard time getting rid of clothes. And I'm not one of those people. I go through my closet twice a year and I'm ruthless and I just give things away. But I helped a few people clean out their closets this year, and they might not have worn things in 20 years. They don't know if they're ever going to wear it again, but they can't let go of it. Or one friend, she said something like, well, that could be a beach cover up. And then she had 5 things for a beach cover up. And I said, when's the last time you went to the beach? Well, about 20 years ago. But it does seem to be a problem for a lot of people. It would be their
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a great, thank you, Barbara, because it reminds me of dealing with sentimental items and also creative people. So, and they can be sort of the same, not always, but so a lot of people see the potential in things that others may not see. So I had a client who saved every single bottle cap that she had ever opened. She had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I said, tell me about them. And she said, but look at how beautiful the colors are on these different sodas, on these different beverages. And like, I have this idea of making this collage and she just had all these ideas. But she had so many ideas and so many bottle caps, but she never got around to doing it. She liked the idea of making something out of the bottle caps, and she saw beauty in something that the rest of us might not quite see the same amount of beauty. And so what I did with her is I helped her pick her favorites, and I gave her a certain amount of time to pick them. And she said, well, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't see them all. I said, no, you're not going to be able to. We're going to take the other ones and put them somewhere else. And if you're missing them or think of one, we can go back and get them. Of course, when they were out of her sight, she didn't think of it. And so we were able to make a huge amount of space in her living room that were all bins of bottle caps. And then I had her in one session make something with the bottle caps. And it was not the elaborate thing she had been thinking about, but we made something. And then we put it in a shadow box and we put it up to give honor to the beauty of bottle caps, not all of the bottle caps. And guess what she did? She donated them to a creative reuse center where teachers and artists are desperate for items to incorporate in their own art. And she had this treasure trove that nobody was using. And that was a way for me to help her say, no one's using these. No one sees the beauty of these because they're in your living room. How many people come in your living room? Nobody, because it's too cluttered. So she finally saw the beauty of letting them go to somebody who might be able to use them. And then she gained all this space. And I had to remind her, just because she has space does not mean you have to invite people over. You can if you want to, because sometimes people will use clutter as an excuse to not host Thanksgiving or holidays or things like that. So it's complicated, a lot of layers to this. Sentimental items. How many of you guys are sentimental? I am so sentimental, just in general, but that can be, again, that same thing about trying to pick a sample of something. And if it's something that's important, to honor it and display it in your home. My grandmother collected, what's that blue dinnerware stuff?
You're talking about Wedgwood.
Yes, Wedgwood. So when I got married, she said, pick a Wedgwood that you want. And so I picked one I liked. She goes, oh, no, not that one. And then I would go pick another one. And then she'd look at it. She goes, no, not this one. And then I finally picked a third one and it had a big crack on it. And she goes, yeah, you can have that one. But it sparked this, like, I want Wedgwood because she values it and she's not giving it to me. And then I saw how expensive it was. And I'm like, I don't need to start collecting Wedgwood. And when she passed, the family saved the Wedgwood and gave it all to me. So I ended up getting it, but I had to just pick the top 3 and donate the rest of them because I did not need to have all of them just because they reminded me of my grandmother and she kept them from me. So we have to look at what are some of the motivations about keeping some of the items, and what do we want now? What's serving us today? Not for the past, not how we see ourselves in the future, but what are we going to do for right now to make it represent who we are right now? Yes, Greta.
Quick question going back to something Barbara was saying. Barbara, you were helping a friend get rid of some clothes. And she looked at that. Oh, yes. Well, I think I could use this as something else. And I think you used the phrase can't get rid of, the person can't get rid of. How do you get beyond the can't get rid of stuff? Let's even just take clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us wear things that we had 20 years ago and we still like them, but there's other stuff that we probably won't wear. How do you get past that big hurdle of not being able to part with whatever it is?
Well, so it depends if they have the space to keep the items. If these friends of Barbara have space in their closet and it's not getting in the way of them finding things that they want, let them keep them. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
It's
If it
not the
gives-
space, it's the mess that you don't want to leave for your children.
Well, if it's your stuff, Greta,
Pardon?
if it's your stuff, right?
If it's my stuff, yeah, there's a sentimental, that's a different category, it's a big one. But even the not sentimental, just getting rid of so that somebody else won't have to deal with it.
So what are the barriers you have to let go of items that you don't really want?
That's something to think about. Yeah. One, is it sentimental, what you said was a somewhat category and so on.
Yeah.
Or is it something I might wear in 3 years from now, even though I didn't wear it for the last 3 years because of COVID and we weren't going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Or-
Phyllis, you want to
or
add
just
in on
because-
that?
Just because of a
I think-
reluctance somehow to part with. Go ahead, Phyllis, I'll be quiet.
Well,
I'm done. I'm
what
done.
the
For now.
dilemma you're raising. For me, I think it's a matter of motivation over time. If I continue to see the same thing there and I haven't worn it, I mean, come on, Phyllis, get rid of it. What are you doing? But another thought I just had about what you're saying about you don't really want to leave it for your heirs. How about if you can't get rid of it, how about letting them know, giving them a heads up? Well, by the way, I have this stuff in my closet that is going to be there, and feel free to, in other words, be candid, be honest about it. And maybe that would make you do it because you wouldn't want to have that conversation.
Yeah. And just piggybacking, these are great comments. Piggybacking on that, schedule a time when you're going to wear that thing.
Hmm.
Like, I don't care if you're going to the grocery store, wear that hot outfit and those shoes and just wear it. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity. And if you feel like, wow, okay, because I know people who have a lot of evening gowns that they used to use and they're holding on to them because they bring back memories, or they're like, well, I never know. There might be a black tie wedding that I might need to go to. And, so it's the what ifs, we have anxiety about
What ifs?
what
Mhm.
ifs. And I said, styles have changed. Do you like shopping? Oh, yes. Well, would it be really fun to maybe go to Nordstrom's and get a new dress for that black tie wedding from your great, I don't know, making this up. But so let the stores be the keepers of the more recent stuff. Or I love saying donate, because vintage stuff, vintage just means anything over 20 years, which is ridiculous. I thought it meant much longer, but I've been told that vintage is really hot right now. So that stuff is being bought up and resold. And so there's a huge need for those kind of items. So if you're got some things that you wore 20, 30 years ago, but maybe they don't fit you, also try it on. Our bodies shift as we age. So things that you looked like $1 million 30 years ago might not quite be the best that you want to convey when. But it's tricky, isn't it? It's really tricky. I don't remember how much time we have, Jane.
I think I just have to thank you so much. Some of your thoughts are just like right on the mark. So we'll all thank Kathleen for a great presentation and thank her for her tips and ability to get us prepared to do what we need to do.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, you can pass my information on, and I'd be happy to consult. If you have a quick question, you can email me, and anything that I brought up that you want more information, I can give you some resources. And yes, Barbara.
I think we should all set aside a time. We all find a date where we're going to clean something out that's really bugging us and then get back on Zoom and tell everybody what we did and what we accomplished.
There you go.
Great
Be
idea.
accountable. I think that's a really good
Accountability.
idea.
That's a good idea.
It's a good
Very,
idea.
very good idea.
So set the
Right.
date, Barbara.
Pardon?
Set the date.
Okay,
I also was having a hard time working on paperwork. And actually got a partner, and every Wednesday morning we get on and say what we're gonna work on. Then we work on it, then we get back on and are accountable. So you can use partners.
You guys are a wealth of information. So
Right?
I gotta hop off, but I just thank you. It's been a pleasure. And if there's anything I can do in the future, just let me know. So thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Very helpful.
Huh. Thank you, Jane, for
You're welcome.
organizing. Yeah,
It's a helpful talk.
yes, and the trick is to go from the talk to the, yes, these are very helpful things, to the doing. And the
That's right.
idea of setting a date and coming back and, yeah.
Let me see about that. Let me see about that.
So you can feel good about even some small thing